I'd like to thank Eric. He's been a huge help throughout this whole process. I also would like to thank the St. Joseph County Public Library for all the help that they've given me as I publish my book. So I wanted to talk about who I was prior to December 5th, 2012. So as most of the audience knows, I was very athletic. I was on the soccer and track team at Adams. I used to run races. And then the main thing is I was a nationally ranked fencer. So I used to compete in nationals and NACS, which is North American Cup. I know many current and past Olympians. I fenced the person who went to the last Olympics one time, and I beat him. So, that was cool. So, on December 5th, 2012, out of nowhere, I was lying on the bathroom floor with my mom seizing. So, what happened was, it's called a subarachnoid hemorrhage. So, the first and the second vertebrae at birth, they usually fuse. Very, very, very rarely they don't fuse. And what I've been told and what I've come to understand is they don't care. Because if you have a fusion, you should have this for motion. So it's like quality of life goes way down if you get a fuse. So very, very rarely, one of those people will have a traumatic accident of some sort. That could be a ski accident or a car accident, and it severs one of the 4 arteries that go out to the brain. And then there's a bleed, strokes, usually people die. So what I had happen was called a non-traumatic brain injury, which was a new term to my mom. I was in a coma. It was a new term to me once I was out of the coma. So basically, the surgeon guessed that I either turned my head the wrong way or I sneezed. And so what he, once again, guess happened is there was a clot, there was a small bleed at the beginning, probably associated with a headache or something, and then the morning of it exploded, December 5th. So I'm lying on the floor, seizing, and then I had a 3-month coma. So coma is a massive definition, and like an actual, like a catatonic coma, probably a month and a half. But to me, when I define myself as out of the coma, is when I accepted that this was reality and not a dream. All right. The result of all this was 8 years of in and out of inpatient and outpatient therapy all across the country, a lot of anger, but the result is this book. So what you have is a 16-chapter book about all of these areas of my life where surgeons, doctors, nurses, therapists, my parents, coaches, teachers, peers, everyone outlined the impossibilities to me. And me, being a contrarian and angry young man in some situations, I was like, what? You don't know what you're talking about. I'm just gonna work on this. And there's chapters in this book where I have not achieved the impossible, such as ice skating. I have ataxia in my legs, so when I skate, it's like this. It's bad. Lots of falling. But I'd say it ranges from walking to board games. So with walking, the quote that I add in the chapter is, his mother needs to understand that he will never leave this hospital alive, which was not given to me, it was not given to my mom, it was given to my pediatrician, and my mom heard it. To board games where I just spazzed out all over the board, destroyed the board a lot. I include in each chapter the lessons that I've learned from all these ridiculous events. Now, about my process of writing this book. So, starting off, I was flush with time because after my year in school, I decided to come back and do therapies, regain some of the abilities I had lost, regained, and then lost again. So I'm sitting home doing therapies, and I decided to spend my free time writing this book. And then I was at Andre House, which is a hospitality center, so it's a homeless shelter without the beds. And I was working there, and on my my off day, I would work on this book. I'm like, whatever. I have nothing else to do. It was also COVID, so we couldn't do anything. It's done. But I wrote this book, and it's here now. So one thing I wanted to add. So when I was in high school, I had no desire to become an author when I grew up. And even now, the book's been out a couple of days. I've read a lot of articles. I'm not sure you can make too much of a living just from publishing a book. I know there's a lot more you can do, but I never had the desire of being an author. I do not think that I'm going to become like J.K. Rowling for this. But I did it, and I would love to share with anyone anything about the writing process or my process of recovery. If anyone wants to ask a question about that, I'll open up the floor to questions now. Yeah, what's up?
So one of the things I found interesting in your book was about the people that would approach you, whether you're at school or at the mall, like police officers or other people who thought you were impaired.
Yeah.
And you kind of glossed over the process of how you convince a security guard or that you're not in fact impaired. You carry a card from your doctor or anything to really give to them to.
That's actually a really interesting point. So, a couple of years ago, I was looking at getting a card, just something I could easily hand out. And then the movie Joker came out, and he has a card in that movie. So I had a therapist who told me that they were having a real issue with people going out, getting trashed, and having a card saying why they were trash. So they just handed it to cops. And I was like, oh, it stinks. So what I've done is I've become very good at telling my story, in few words, just very quickly. As I was working at Andre House, serving people experiencing homelessness, and I would receive lots of insults, and I got very good at making jokes out of it, which might not be very good overall, but I would say that my method is just constantly 100% of the time, just be nice. One lesson in the book that I learned is brain injuries are very individual. So changing society's views, which was something a professor at Notre Dame recommended to me, would actually be a disservice to other people who need views to be like that. And they rely on people, aiding them. And so for me, I just try to be nice and whatever, deal with it. Just kind of crazy.
And that's work for you.
It's work, and it's coming out of jail. Yes. I will say that in Phoenix, I had a bouncer who kicked me out of the bar. I explained to him, I'm not that drunk, I had a brain injury, and he responded, yeah, whatever, okay. I was like, all right. So I left, and but it's harder at times. That's very rare. I've had that happen once where they're like, oh, you're full of it. Which is hard, but that's anyone else.
I had a question. Yeah.
Yeah, go
Actually,
ahead.
a few, but if you do need the microphone, by all means, you can use this or just say it from your seat. But so one of the things I've heard a lot about, speaking of like dealing with trauma and just any challenges that you face, this idea of like journaling is helpful, right? Just getting your
Yes.
thoughts on paper. So I'm kind of curious to see or to learn, like, as you wrote this, what were some successes, things that were helpful to you to kind of process what was happening?
Yeah.
And then what were some challenges writing things down?
So I would say that, like you were saying, the journaling being helpful. I've heard psychologically that it really aids you, and I always like, journaling's, for like pussy. It's like, I'm not gonna do that, but it did help me a lot. It helped me through the process of actually regaining these things. Like the one I was saying earlier, ice skating. I actually enjoy going back to that and, like jotting down notes of like going to Howard Park and how like awful it went. Or I skated at Compton and Notre Dame once, and that was epically bad. But journaling about it was really helpful. And then the second part was where it didn't help, or
Yeah, there's challenges, because I know just some people, as you're writing things down, maybe it's not working the way you want it to, it's not helpful, or you get writer's block, or were there any
Yeah.
challenges as you were trying to tell the story you're writing?
so I used to get writer's block. I think it might have been like self-prescribed writer's block. Like I don't want to do my homework. But writing this book, I actually never experienced writer's block because it was like a diary.
Yeah.
Like I don't think like Anne Frank was ever like, I don't know what to write about. Like she wrote about her days, and those were eventful.
Yeah.
So I would not claim that anything was difficult throughout this process. I will actually say that editing it was like hard at times, like just various people would like get upset, and I'm like, I don't want to hurt your feelings, like I'm sorry, it's like a diary. Like I think that anyone, if say like a grade school girl is writing about a guy and their diary becomes public, that would hurt her. So with me putting my diary, made out in public, that hurt me in various ways. But it's bad. But I spent one of the chapters in the book is about my summer spent in Peru, and that was after freshman year. And after a semester of lying around feeling bad for myself, I started thinking that, who am I to complain about life? Like, I got it pretty good. And so I expanded on that throughout my college life. My roommate got upset with me in a class about this. I said, we think we had it bad. None of us got nailed to a cross. There's always something worse. And like, Jesus was sharpened up on the cross. This is better than like being tortured for years. And there's always something worse. There's always a bigger fish, there's always there's something else to think about. And that's how I view my life. So I think about how other people have it, and then I don't feel bad about areas of my life that might be less than perfect, because I think about that, and that's one of the chapters in the book. Anything else? Yes,
I feel like
sir.
there's a light on me, man.
Yes, I think so.
Instead of singing, I'll ask you a question. So you and your parents were told that things are impossible, that you're not gonna leave the hospital alive.
Mhm.
How does the medical experts, very well educated, how do they rationalize that they were wrong? And how do you use your new platform to tell people that just because someone has, MD after the name or
Yeah.
PhD doesn't mean that they know what they're necessarily talking about in your case?
So that surgeon is like the world's most modest man. He also, in my opinion, might be the world's smartest man. But it might just be a surgeon thing, but he's always pointing to stuff he doesn't know. So I think that my entry aided in that mindset in many people below surgeons, like below, but like nurses, therapists, even doctors. There's been a lot of modesty that has like been born of my injury, which I love that. My injury actually, someone that was at IU was telling me about, I think that they might have rewrote this chapter because of your injury. I was like, cool. I don't know that, but and it was at an IU hospital, so that makes sense, and it was true, but I would just say that due to my injury, a lot of people did start to feel more humble. I hope that I've tried to make, like my injury public, like information, like in medicine. And in regards to how I would tell people that just because someone who has an MD like after their name doesn't mean they're guaranteed right. I almost think that more so than that, my injury should inspire humility, inspire people to be like, you don't have it all figured out. For example, my older sister, super smart, super awesome, I like her. She's great, I love her. But she's a physical therapist, and I don't know why, but every new physical therapist I know feels like they have it all figured out, and my sister used to be similar. She would tell me and my mom that we were wrong about my injury, and I frequently am wrong. That is true. My mom, not so much. So, but I think that my injury allowed her to become more humble, because Madeline, I love talking to her now. She actually calls me to ask questions. I'm like, this is awesome. Like, you've like grown up so much. You're older than me. But I've not grown up that much yet. But I would say that my injury inspired humility on behalf of like everyone who's come in contact with it, which is really neat. Anyone else? Anyone? Taj again.
Yeah, so I want to talk about something that's not in the book.
All right.
That you touched upon, so I happen to know the artist personally.
Uh-huh.
I'd like you to talk about the cover and the process of the cover. And I've worked with Kelly a few times, talking about how that went, and where how he came about. Is that you in the picture?
Yeah. So my process with Kelly, who is my aunt, she kept asking me, what do you want? About the margins and blah, blah, and I just said, you're an artist, you're in charge of it. I don't know. I really don't care. And I know that she designed the logo for Inner Technologies too. I know a couple of people in her work for it. But for everyone who doesn't know Kelly, she's done. I think she majored in art in college, right? Yeah. So she is an artist, and I honestly was like, do what you want. I'm not gonna get overly involved in this. And so yeah.
Well, did she send you like rough drafts and you were like, yeah, okay, and gave her notes? Or you
Yes,
just like,
yes. The first draft she sent me was a picture of me with like my feet out on a bike, and that day I wasn't feeling well, so I was like falling over and stuff, and I also hadn't eaten, so I was like, my blood sugar was low, and I just flat out, I was, Kelly, I don't like this, and okay, and then she tried new stuff, and it was really easy for me, not for her, but I think so anyone who doesn't know, my dad is the, I don't know, his top CFO or whatever, but so much of his job and so much of what I do in my life is like delegating, being willing to let people who actually know it do it. And that's how I respond to a lot. Like, I will admit that every word of this book was me, but the picture not so much. I first time I've seen it, but no, not quite. But anyone else? Anyone?
So how do you feel, Matthew, about overcoming impossible by yourself? Is that possible?
Oh, yeah, no, I wouldn't argue that it is. So, so I spent the past 2 years in Phoenix, Arizona, where I'm kind of unfortunately close with a lot of people experiencing homelessness, a lot of people that are doing bad things, in various sense, and that's been tough. And what I tell them all the time is that, you can't do it alone. You gotta accept help. And a lot of them struggle with that, similar to how I struggled with it throughout my injury. All of them are really good at it now. But I wouldn't argue that it's possible really to do things fully on your own. Actually, so on this topic, last year I had to come up with an interesting question in the morning, and I asked, when was the last time you felt independent? And it was a joke, because the night before, they've been like, you're not independent. I'm like, yes, I am. And the priest said, I think independence is kind of like I think you use the word fallacy, it's crazy. No one's full-heartedly independent, and I was like, whatever. But I think that's mostly true, because there's not a single, I don't think there's a single chapter in this book that I did full-heartedly on my own, and that is actually a lesson in a lot of the chapters. You can kind of conjoin a lot of them, is that you can't do things on your own. You have to be willing to accept help. So yeah, alright. Anyone else?
What are the next
Sir.
chapters for Matthew Brewster?
So next in my life, I am working at a multinational business. There are plenty of people in this room who are also employed. But yeah, so I've wrote the book. I just had an interview today with the current, for the next couple of days. He's the executive director at Andre House, and I'm the new board of recruitment at Andre House, which is like an 8-hour-a-week job, so it won't take away from my current work. I also, I published a book. I've read in a lot of areas that one of the main portions of writing a book is speaking engagements, which I'm very excited about. One thing I didn't share in the speech I meant to, so prior to my injury, I was very, very, very social. I was gonna say, I'm a true Midwesterner, which I hope everyone in here likes that, because I lived with a young boy from the East Coast, and he was one of my best friends. I like him a lot, but he was so intense, and whereas I am a Midwesterner, and I'm just laid back and let things happen. It's fine. But so I was in Florida with my dad, and he there was some interaction with an employee at Disney where he got mad. And I was like, Dad, I've literally never seen you go full East Coast or anything. He's like, yeah, well, they were in the wrong. I was like, but yeah, so that's why I see my life going, is just into speaking, into this recruitment job, continuing to work with indoor technologies. I go on so much, I'm sorry.
Are you still living in Phoenix?
Currently, I just recently, like yesterday, ended my lease and in my current apartment, so I'm looking to move. Either, I think it's kind of been narrowed down to Chicago, but I was looking at Tempe, I was looking at Tampa, I was looking at North Carolina, and then I was looking back in South Bend as well. And I think I landed on Chicago. Not entirely certain, but that's where I think I'll end up. Anyone else?
So since there are people here who knew you in grade school,
Yes.
you only touch on it in the book a little bit, but I think there at the base of like what happened to you and how you recovered, you had a lot of people praying for you,
Oh,
and you
absolutely.
had a lot of people taking care of your family so that your family could take care of you. And I think that factors into what Eric was saying about building community.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
I think
So-
that this is a great community that we live in, and I think that all of the people
Yes.
prayed
Never.
for you and
Yeah.
visited you and brought your parents food.
Absolutely, sure. So I was hazing away from that topic, but one of the chapters in the books is about coming to faith. And I'll share on that a little bit, but after my injury, I felt exceptionally atheist. Like, I was like, there's no way that God can exist. Like, no God would put me through this, like, blah, blah, blah. Then I learned about the statistics associated with my injury, and I was like, okay. So I was trying so hard to figure out who was responsible for me living, and, you know, it's fact, virtually every religion you can possibly conceive of was represented in praying for me. You know, so I have no idea which prayers worked, or if they all worked, or what. But my surgeon, his name is Dr. Thomas Leipzig, if anyone wants to look him up, but in my opinion, best surgeon in the world, he said the words, higher power. What the heck? So, yes, I would absolutely agree full-heartedly that all of the prayers really aided me. All of the aid that my family experienced throughout my injury absolutely aided me, so there could be people like in South Bend, people all across the country. You know, my dad, like his brother stepped in, and there are two people in this room who really stepped up their work during that time. And passed in as well. I'm not saying God works, I'm just saying you work. But, you know, teachers from grade school, you know, there was in a prayer service at St. Joe Parish, in South Bend on Hill Street, and it was massive. I've heard, I wasn't there, but just everything was represented. My mom always talked to me about some like a Chinese meal or something, that it was her first meal outside of the hospital, and that was funded by someone or other. My grade school, I think, bought me my first computer.
Oh, that was your high school.
It was on high school?
That was John Adams.
Oh, sorry. But yeah, there was, what I think my mom is trying to get at is I experienced a ridiculous amount of aid, and I think that, sorry, this is South Park, I'm sorry, I can't say it, but it's really important that you're willing to accept help, and I think that plays into what Eric was saying about, the community thing and, self-healing, I think it was he said, but I think self-healing is great, but it works better when you're willing to accept that other people know better than you do, therapists or psychiatrists, lots of humility there as well. Anyone else?
So, how long did it take you from the actual injury through the coma till you can stand up and talk?
Oh, okay, so, it's a great question. So as I was saying earlier, when I defined myself as out of the coma is when I believed I was no longer dreaming. Like I accepted this as reality. That was 3 months. However, in my dream, I recall saying something to like Vicky, my speech therapist. I remember standing up, trying to get to my bed. So they give me a seatbelt. It drove me nuts. So I'm not entirely certain, but for me, even once I was able to walk, it took me years to get like good at it. Like you watch, like I'll probably almost fall down the stairs when I get off this stage. It's still a problem, but I think that overcoming the walking chapter, the impossibility is he will never leave this hospital alive. I did. I left the hospital alive. But the impossibility, remains there. I've remained working on it, and that was one issue that I did. Going back to a question earlier about an issue I had. Writing this book, I really wanted to achieve all of the impossibilities prior to publishing it. And I would sit there and angrily write, and then I remember my dad who told me that, it's okay to publish this without accomplishing the impossibilities. So there's at least one, there are probably quite a few chapters in there where you'll read it and you'll be like, he never accomplished the impossibility. Why is this bogus?
But you're still working on those.
I'm so working on it now, somehow. But 10 years later, so going on that 10 years thing, when I was told in the hospital or had this service, you have 2 years to recover. I was like, okay, I can do therapy for 2 years. Then it was 6 years. And my older sister was like 10 years. I was like, you're crazy. I'm not doing it. But I think that's probably true. Especially with brain injuries, especially with people who have brain injuries at my age. Neuroplasticity is crazy. It's so awesome. Watching neurons and everything. I've watched my brain, I'm watching neurons. Other people have, but watching them regain that ability is kind of crazy, and it's really cool. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
We're going to visit my nephew who experienced a similar episode last November, and we haven't seen him yet. And he is in recovery, but I'm kind of nervous. What advice would you have for us? I mean, I've talked to him, and he too was. His parents were told, that night that it was a very dire situation, and
Yep.
they tried to be frank with him. He's doing great. but
Good.
I'm nervous about going to see him.
Yeah.
What advice would you have for a loving aunt?
So I actually I realized how little I know about this when my godparents' kid had brain injury and I came back from Phoenix to see him. I'm just in the hospital. My godfather told me that my mom would have kicked me and just not responding well to how I was acting. I will say that for him, you just being there is probably going to make a difference to him. For me, I don't really fully recall the beginning of my injury, but everyone wrote letters, and my room was like plastered in orange, and I thought that was crazy, and I think it actually aided in my mindset. This is a dream because everything was so awesome. I'm just dreaming. But you know, for your nephew, that's hard. I'm really sorry. I think that most people accept that others are not really experiencing this. I'm guessing that your nephew's injury is rare, and it's probably a good thing that it's rare, but I think trying is all you can do in any situation. And I'd love for you to put me in contact with your nephew, and I'll talk to him. I don't know where it's at. I live in Arizona, so.
Thank you, we're going to Kansas City, thank you.
Kansas City, yeah, so I don't think I'm going there anytime soon, but yeah, I'll reach out to him, so.
You FaceTimed with Philip when he was in the hospital.
Yes, I did. That was just, he doesn't remember it.
No,
it was
but
bad
he
for me.
reacted, yeah.
So, I will do that. What she's talking about, so this is the godparent child who had the brain injury, and I FaceTimed him, and he doesn't remember at all, he said, but it was awful for me. Like, everyone else became very experienced with dealing with people, like, in a hospital. I never had that. I was in the hospital, so when I see someone in the hospital, I was like, this is terrible, and which was hard. But he's doing great. I'm sure that your nephew will make a full recovery.
Oh, thank you very much. Yes.
Anyone else?
A lot of different themes coming out. I was just kind of curious, as people are reading the book or as they finish it up, what do you hope the biggest takeaways are for them?
So, each of the lessons, I think they're all equally important to me. But I would say just the mindset of like never giving up, regardless of how dire it is. Regardless of like anyone who doesn't believe that you'll make a recovery. I think that never, ever, ever giving up. Actually, so I host a podcast just for fun, and it's about inspiration. And in it recently, I talked about Tommy Shelby. My grandpa was like, he is not inspiring. I was like, no, but he never gives up. He always is striving to do something else. Granted, he's a 1930s gangster, so it's not really a good thing some of the stuff he gets into. But that similar mindset, never giving up, never stopping, always striving, always trying to make life better. Not in the same way he does, but always trying. So important in life. I don't remember who asked that question, but yeah. But you.
Yeah. Thanks.
So, thank you very much for coming. I'm sure Eric will have some closing remarks, but just thank you to everyone. Lots of family and friends in the audience and new people. in person.
Let's get Matthew a nice. And Matthew, the humor